Hello and welcome back to the Andy's Bet Club podcast, the podcast where we take a look at some of the biggest games across Europe and pick you out a four-leg bet builder. Today we are focusing on the huge clash between Barcelona and Newcastle following that dramatic first leg at St James's Park. Now, I can't do this by myself, so I am of course joined by two of Andy's Bet Club's experts in Ramis and Robin. Now, Ramis, I'm going to come to you first because we've got a few words to say, I think, about our selections on the weekend for Liverpool versus Tottenham. Now, I'm going to let you lead on this, Ramis, and tell the viewers kind of what we've been discussing before we jumped on this.
Yeah, I might need to find out if Arne Slotnick or Tudor are subscribed to the podcast, to be honest, because I had no idea why Canate didn't start the game. That was very surprising to me. And then Gallagher as well, not even in the squad. I think he had an illness or whatever. But yeah, we always try to look at expected lineups. We try to do the best we can to kind of pick players that we're pretty sure are going to start. But you can't always account for managers changing half their team sometimes. And I think it backfired a little bit on Slot, to be honest, because Liverpool didn't look great without Canate, without Ekatiko, without Sama. So yeah, I mean, it's annoying for us, but it's probably a bit more annoying for Slot, to be honest.
Yeah, we always encourage people to wait till lineups to place their bets, of course, as well. So if you're placing a bet on this one, I would say just wait until lineups if you're going to follow us, just to be sure. But I mean, hopefully we might get it right this time. Robin, I'll come to you. We were talking about a very interesting weekend in the Premier League, full of viral moments, from Tudor's mistaken identity with Slot and the referee in the middle of the Chelsea huddle. But all focus on the Champions League now. Barcelona versus Newcastle. What's your early thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously an absolutely massive game, and obviously the English club struggled as a whole last week. But, you know, I actually think Newcastle have got a bit of an outside chance here. The way they set up to play on the counter-attack with so much pace on the break, they could be very dangerous. Barcelona are obviously missing a couple of starting defenders and look a little bit weak defensively. However, you look at Barcelona's home record this season, they have won 18 of 19 at home. The exception was against PSG in the Champions League when both teams were really quite depleted back in September. They've got an excellent home record, and that just makes it really tough to see Newcastle getting through here.
Yeah, really exciting one, especially with both clubs having really positive results at the weekend. Newcastle getting a fantastic result at Chelsea, and Barca straight back to what they seem to do at home, especially as you mentioned there, Robin, with a 5-2 win over Sevilla. But we'll get straight into the bet builder now. Ramis, do you want to kick us off with the first selection that you and Robin have put your heads together on?
Yeah, we've gone for Pedri to win 2 or more fouls at 1.57. This was a selection I was thinking about even before I saw the market, and I'm still willing to take it at the price. He's such a brilliant player, Pedri. I love watching him. I remember when Newcastle lost to Barcelona early in the season, the league phase at St James's Park, and everybody was talking about how good Pedri was.
Yeah, he was magic, wasn't he? He was
him and De Jong together, they just controlled the whole game, and it's always a bit funny to me when we see players that we don't always see in the Premier League and Champions League, and we go, wow, they're so good. Like, they don't do this every single week. There seems to be this entitlement that only the best players can play in the Premier League, and it isn't the case. Pedri, obviously one of those. Across the two meetings that Barcelona have had with Newcastle this season, he's won 7 fouls. He was fouled 4 times last week and 3 times in the meeting between the sides earlier on in the season. And that's mainly because you kind of have to foul Pedri to stop him having so much control over the game. He has about 93 touches per game in the Champions League, and he's just a heartbeat of everything Barcelona do. So Newcastle can't really do anything other than chop him down. It's hard to see how he doesn't get fouled at least 2 times in this game, especially when he's going to be up against Joe Linton, who, as we know, is one of the most aggressive players in the Newcastle setup. And I also think there'll be a bit of this Newcastle that they'll want to slow the game down as much as possible. They'll know Barcelona have the tempo, the control, so they'll want to kind of break that up as much as possible. And they did that quite well in the first leg, but part of that is bringing Pedri down as much as they can.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of look at a game, and I always look at Newcastle games, and Joe Linton's always such a player I focus on, because I mean, he was such a consistent card bet, and he was fantastic in that first leg. I thought he was a real one of those where I've seen someone mention on Twitter that people shouldn't just look at match ratings, because I think he got something like a 5.8 match rating on FOTMob, and he was fantastic, like, because he's just the exact kind of player you need if you're going to stop those technicians. We'll lock that one in then. Pedri 2 plus fouls drawn at 1.57. It's the first of our 4-leg bet builder. Robin, over to you. What's the second pick that you guys have gone for?
So the second pick that myself and Ramis have gone for is over 2.5 goals, which is available at 1.36. Now, admittedly, last week finished one each, but context is everything. There was 2.72 XG in the game and 25 shots. The previous game at St James's Park between the clubs back in September had 2.76 XG and 29 shots. So these are games that are consistently producing high volumes of shots, high volumes of chances. And in particular now that we're into the knockout stages of the Champions League, where we are so used to seeing teams go at each other hammer and tongs, I really fancy that there'll be at least 3 goals in this game. Just looking back last season, for example, 11 of the 14 second legs in the Champions League from the round of 16 onwards produced over 2.5 goals. And then we talked already about Barcelona and the fact that they are so prolific at Camp Nou and score goals, concede goals. You mentioned the weekend's game against Sevilla, which finished 5-2. Barcelona have scored 3 or more goals at home in their last 7 games. So they're on a roll of just producing those 3 goals that we need on their own. In terms of Newcastle, prior to the weekend's win over Chelsea, which obviously finished 1-0, they had been on a run of 6 successive games away from home, which had produced over 2.5 goals. In the Champions League, they're also very prone to being involved in high-scoring games, with 8 of their last 11 producing at least 3 goals. And both teams have scored in each of their last 4 in the Champions League. So I really expect this to be a game in which there's a lot of action, a lot of goalmouth incident, and for sure I think there's going to be at least 3 goals in this game. I think it's going to be a thriller.
Yeah, plenty of good points there, Robin. So we'll lock that one in, 1.36 for over 2.5 match goals. And Ramis, back to you then for the third pick of the 4.
We've gone for Barcelona to commit 9 or more fouls at 1.25. Now, if you bet on the foul market before team foul market, you may be familiar that it can be quite frustrating at times. There's nothing worse than when you're sitting following a bet, looking for shots, fouls, corners, whatever it is to rack up, and you look at the stats, and after half an hour there's been 1 or
the
2,
refs playing advantages. That is the worst. Nothing makes me more annoyed.
Yeah, it can be a very frustrating market, but as Robin alluded to, context is everything, and I think the context plays into quite a lot of team and match fouls in this game. So Barcelona, they're averaging 10.1 fouls committed per game in the Champions League, which admittedly isn't a crazy standout figure. It's actually an increase on the number of fouls they commit domestically. It's about 9.1 per game, so still both over the line we need here, but they're not a side that are known for diving into challenges or whatever. But against Newcastle, I think that naturally the aggression that Newcastle play with will bring that out of Barcelona. It's landed in both of the head-to-head meetings between these sides. Barcelona committed 9 fouls last week and 12 fouls in their trip to St James's Park earlier in the season. And Newcastle as a side are pretty good at drawing fouls. I mentioned their physicality, their aggression, but there's not many sides in Europe that can actually match that, which leads to them actually having a pretty good record when it comes to winning fouls. 9+ fouls in 80% of their Champions League games, and that actually stays consistent if you look at their Premier League games as well. 24 of their 30 games have seen them draw 9 or more fouls from their opponents. We've talked a lot about how risky Barcelona's overall kind of style of play is, that high line, and I think that lends itself to maybe being a bit more clumsy with challenges. That threat that Newcastle will be able to have on the counter-attack with Gordon, with Barnes, that's a lot of speed that Barcelona will need to cut down before it gets close to their goal, otherwise they could be in real danger. And as I mentioned with the Pedri selection as well, I think Newcastle will want this game to be slowed down as much as possible. So any chance, any contact that they can get from Barcelona, I can see them dropping to the ground and trying to slow the game down and get their foot in the game as much as possible. I also like in this market when I know there's some players that could, top up 2 or 3. So the 2 I've highlighted, maybe if you wanted to look for individual player fouls, one is Lewis Hall and Joe Linton. I mean, Joe Linton's more in the mould that anytime you'll feel anyone near him, he'll just go down to get that foul. And Lewis Hall, I think Lewis Hall's been brilliant this season. I think he should get a call up.
Incredible at the weekend, wasn't he? He was really, really good.
Yeah, he was really, really good. And he locked up Yamal really, really well and actually caused Yamal a lot of frustration going the other way. So I can see Hall and Joe Linton particularly causing Barcelona quite a few problems here.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for looking at, when you look at the fouls, I mean, Barcelona are so dominant in a lot of their league games that this is just a completely different kettle of fish. And there's obviously pressure, a different type of pressure with these kind of teams domestically, that they almost have to keep winning just to kind of maintain their gap to other teams around them. Whereas a game like this is such so different and such a one-off that I always feel like I don't have the stats to handle this, but I feel like when I've watched Barca in recent years, like against PSG and in games like that, that it does kind of get a bit more needly and there's a little bit more going on. And as you say, Ramis, with when you've got Joe Linton and co breathing down your neck, I'm sure that's only going to exasperate that, really, isn't it? So yeah, we'll pop that one in. Barcelona 9 plus team fouls at 1.25. So we'll round out the bet builder. Back to you, Robin, for the final pick from you guys.
Yeah, so completing our bet builder will be Anthony Gordon to have one or more shots on target. Now, so much has been made about Anthony Gordon's form in the Champions League compared to the Premier League, but he's starting to come good domestically as well. He's scored in each of his last two, and he will go into this game certainly feeling that he's got a bit of a point to prove. Obviously, last week he was subject to a bit of criticism from Wayne Rooney, which he called out after the match against Chelsea. So he's going to go into this game feeling really fired up, you would imagine. And he's actually Newcastle's leading player when it comes to shots on target in the Champions League this season, with 1.83 per 90. Now, I'd mentioned about his improved form, and that's kind of a story that's played out in the statistics too. He's had a shot on target in 7 of his last 8 starts. And when it comes to playing away from home, he's been particularly good. He's had a shot on target in 6 of his last 7 road starts, plus PSG away from home. And as I mentioned, he's been particularly prone to being excellent against strong opposition on the road. He had 3 shots on target at the weekend against Chelsea, recently had 2 again against Manchester City, obviously had that outstanding, historic game against Karabakh when he scored 4 goals but had 6 shots on target. And recently had 2 shots on target away against Liverpool as well. And in fact, it's only been remarkably Spurs that have managed to shut him out in terms of a shot on target in recent weeks. So this is a guy in excellent form. We've spoken so much already about Newcastle's pace and the threat that we expect them to bring on the counter-attack. And Anthony Gordon is a guy that encapsulates that. I would expect him to have at least 1 shot on target this game. And I think the odds of 1.57 are particularly good here.
It's a massive game if he wants to get that starting spot in the national team as well, isn't it? This is the kind of showreel game that if he's going to impress, then this is the stage to do it on, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talk so much about England's wealth of quality in the attacking areas, but equally there's a lot of players who are out of form there at the moment, and if Anthony Gordon can go to Camp Nou and shine, maybe even score 1 or 2, then you have to figure him into the starting 11 for the World Cup. Surely he has to certainly be in contention.
All right, so that rounds out our 4-leg bet builder. We've got Pedri 2+ fouls drawn. We've got over 2.5 match goals, Barcelona to commit 9+ team fouls, and Anthony Gordon to have 1 or more shots on target. Now, if you're listening to this and you like the selections, but maybe you rather go a bit further afield, go a bit higher odds, or the other way, maybe you want to drop it down, play a little bit safer, you can do. You just need to head to the Andy's Bet Club website and use the fantastic bet building tool on there. It is full of stats and information. I would really recommend anyone who is backing a bet for any of the Champions League games this week to take a look at that. It doesn't guarantee that you'll win more bets, but it does guarantee that you can bet a little bit smarter when it comes to making your selections. Now, we're backing this bet on Betfair, comes out just above 3-1. Do make sure that you're 18+ and please gamble responsibly. Now, lads, final thing before we sign off. Score prediction, are Newcastle going through? Ramis, I'm going to come to you first.
I'm going to back Eddie Howe because I've been very impressed with him recently. I'm going to go Newcastle on penalties to get through after a 2-2 draw at normal time.
Robin, what we're saying?
Yeah, I actually had a quick look at I'll look at the odds to qualify, and I quite like Newcastle's odds, but I think Barcelona are probably just going to have too much. I'm going to go 3-1 Barcelona.
Nice, good one. I may as well chuck mine in as well. I think it's going the distance as well, but I'm going to go Barca on penalties just to oppose you, Ramis, so that we can maybe have an argument on the next time we're on together. Anyway, thanks for that, lads, and thanks for listening, everyone. Do remember to subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on, and join us on the next episode. And thanks once again for listening.